Danny Hernandez, better known as 6ix9ine, sat down with Charleston White for round 2 of what can only be described as one of the most controversial podcast episodes. This year, these two aren't exactly known for holding back, and this time they decided to aim their words directly at Gilly the Kid in a way that has the entire hip-hop community talking. What they said was so disrespectful, so controversial, that even by internet standards, people are asking if they went too far this time. Charleston White kicked things off by explaining how this whole situation started. He was doing an interview on 6IX9INE TV, just a regular interview in his local town.
I remember being on live when the news broke that day, and one of my partners, who I consider a partner, Kareem Blitz, out of New York, got on my live, and he was chastening Gilly, saying, "This is what you get. You promote these lyrics, you promote this energy. As a matter of fact, Gilly, when you had King Von and Dirk on y'all podcast, and they start singing the songs about smoking Tuka, y'all were dancing to it. Y'all were dancing to it. When Pooh Shiesty called home from prison, that nigga was talking big dog talk. They wasn't rebuking that shit. When Jay Prince was on there making threats, they didn't check Jay Prince. So, nigga, y'all promote this detrimental shit. So, here I come, nigga. From day one, I've been against it. If your kid die playing gangster, I will laugh. If me and you get into it and your kid die in a car accident, I laugh. If your kid fall out the car and get run over by a truck, I'll laugh if I don't like you. If me and you get into it and your baby get molested, I'll make mockery of your baby getting molested. So fuck your baby, nigga. I don't like you or your kids. I'm that kind of nigga. It's no different than the gang banging nigga when they ride through our neighborhoods and shoot these guns, knowing that there's kids in the neighborhood.
When he brought up Gilly's name, but he wasn't just casually mentioning him. Charleston was making a point about something much deeper, something that cuts to the core of what's wrong with hip-hop culture today. He said that Gilly should have protected his son. He should have called him, guided him, told him to stop playing gangster instead of trying to be a main character in the street.
The black YouTubers, they pit each other against each other, homie. So I said something about Gilly on a YouTube video, on the 6IX9INE TV interview.
Why do you gotta go at Gilly?
Because
I like Gilly the Kid. That's an ally to me.
Nah, he should have protected his son. If you like him, you should have called him and said, "Yo, God, your son," instead of trying to be a main character at 60 years old.
He playing gangster, so he promoting the gangster culture.
So
here I am. I'm coming as a youth advocate, being as an internet sensation. So nigga, I don't know that celebrities is hearing what I'm saying. I'm just doing an interview in my local town. So I'm making an example of Pop Hunter, as we talked about last time. So I'm saying, homie, they shaming kids for mafia codes. Yeah. They want homie. So when I said his name, I gave that as an example, not shaming him. Then that nigga jumped in my inbox with the gangster tough shit saying, "Yeah, you got a problem, Goofy. When I see you, I'm gonna be in Dallas, I'm gonna slap you." I'm saying, come on, mama, you ain't never slapped no grown man.
You never smack nobody.
You ain't never slapped no grown man.
But why do we gotta start beef right now? Why can't we keep it real and just...
Well, you asking us a question. So
Charleston claims he was speaking as a youth advocate, as someone trying to warn young people about the dangers of gangster culture. He says he was using Gilly's son as an example, not to shame him, but to show other kids what can happen when you glorify violence and street codes. But here's where it gets complicated. Charleston wasn't just giving some theoretical example. He was talking about a real person, a real tragedy, a real family that's still grieving. After Charleston made those comments, Gilly apparently jumped in his inbox with some serious threats. According to Charleston, Gilly was talking that tough talk, saying things like, "You got a problem. When I see you, I'm going to slap you. I'm going to be in Dallas." Charleston's response was essentially calling Gilly's bluff. He said Gilly has never slapped a grown man in his life. So why start the beef now? Why can't they just keep it real and have an honest conversation about the culture instead of resorting to threats and violence? But 6ix9ine, never one to miss an opportunity to stir the pot, jumped in with his own perspective.
My way, I've been
responding. Let me ask you something, right?
Yeah.
You white, so you're gonna be like, "Oh, all right." So listen.
Were you discriminating against white people, sir?
As a white 60-year-old
I'm
man,
not 60.
Right? I'm just saying.
Hey.
say you're 60 years old, right? As a white 60-year-old man, right? Would you continue talking this street shit? Like, I'll smack the shit out you. You're 60.
Depends how much money I've made. If I've made enough where I don't have to fuck with this shit,
and
then
for that attitude, your son will get killed at 60.
Because your son go play gangster. Your son still go play gangster.
Because he's like, my daddy,
So your son, so you and your son is shaming another rapper for street codes, and your son get in the streets.
Now you're gonna be like, oh my God, yo, shit crazy. Yeah.
So when King Von was on the podcast, it was cool smoking on Tuka. Nobody had a problem with long as Tuka was being smoked on.
Yeah.
A hypothetical question that really put things in perspective. He said, imagine you're a white 60-year-old man. Would you still be talking this street nonsense about slapping people and acting tough? Would you still be promoting that lifestyle at 60 years old? It's a valid question that exposes something crucial about hip-hop culture. How long are grown men supposed to keep playing these street games? His answer was brutally honest. He said it depends on how much money you've made. If you've made enough money where you don't have to deal with street life anymore, then why would you continue promoting it? And then 6ix9ine dropped a bomb that had everyone's jaw on the floor. He said that exact attitude, that exact mentality of promoting street culture while being rich and successful is why Gilly's son ended up dead. He said if you're still acting like your daddy, still playing gangster, even though your family has money and opportunities, you're going to end up as another statistic. Charleston White doubled down on this point in a way that honestly made a lot of people uncomfortable. He brought up a specific memory of being on live when the news broke about Gilly's son. One of his partners, Kareem Blitz from New York, got on the live and started calling out Gilly, saying, "This is what you get when you promote destructive lyrics and dangerous energy." Charleston reminded everyone about times when Gilly had King Von and Lil Durk on his podcast, and when they started rapping about violence, about smoking their dead enemies, Gilly and his co-hosts were dancing to it. They were celebrating. He pointed out that when Pooh Shiesty called into the show from prison talking that big dog talk, nobody checked him. When Jai Prince was on there making threats, they didn't push back. So according to Charleston, Gilly has been promoting this detrimental culture for years, making money off of it, celebrating it, and now he wants sympathy when that same culture takes his son. Charleston said he's been against this culture from day one, and he's not going to pretend to have sympathy now just because it hit close to home for Gilly. Then Charleston said something that really shocked people. He laid out his philosophy in the most blunt terms possible. He said if your kid dies playing gangster, he'll laugh. If you and him get into it and your kid dies in a car accident, he'll laugh. If your kid gets molested, he'll make a mockery of it. His reasoning, he compared it to gang members who ride through neighborhoods shooting guns, knowing there are kids around. They don't care about innocent children. So why should he care about the children of people he's beefing with?
Now, this is where things get really complicated.
On one hand, Charleston White is making a valid point about the hypocrisy in hip-hop culture. If you're rich, if you've made it out of the streets, if you have resources and opportunities, why are you still promoting gangster behavior to your kids? Why are you still celebrating violence and street codes? Gilly Kid is a successful podcaster, a media personality with money and influence. He had every opportunity to steer his son away from street life. But according to Charleston, he did the opposite. He created an environment where playing gangster seemed cool, seemed acceptable, seemed like the right way to carry yourself. 6ix9ine knows this playbook well because he's used it himself for years. When the world canceled him for cooperating with federal authorities, for snitching as they called it, he didn't just accept the criticism. He started pointing out all the rappers that people love who had also cooperated with police at some point. He showed the paperwork, he exposed the hypocrisy, and he forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about their favorite artists. His argument was always that at least he never snitched on his actual friends, unlike some of these rappers who turned on their own crews. Charleston White uses that exact same strategy. He forces people to confront the uncomfortable reality that they're complicit in the culture they claim to hate. They listen to music glorifying murder. They celebrate artists who promote violence. They dance to songs about dead teenagers. And then they want to act shocked when more teenagers end up dead. It's a cycle that keeps repeating because nobody wants to take responsibility for their role in perpetuating. But here's the thing that makes this whole situation so controversial. Even if Charleston White and 6ix9ine are making valid points about the culture, even if they're exposing real hypocrisy, does that give them the right to continually disrespect a dead child? Does making a valid cultural critique justify mocking a father's grief? These are questions that don't have easy answers, and that's exactly why this conversation has blown up the way it has. Gilly rarely even talks about Charleston White or 6ix9ine. When he does mention them, usually only in response to something they've already done or said. He's not out here starting beef with them or bringing up their personal tragedies. So why do they feel the need to constantly use his son's death as ammunition? Why is that their go-to response whenever Gilly criticizes them? It feels less like they're making a cultural critique and more like they're just being cruel for the sake of getting attention. The reality is that both things can be true at the same time. Charleston White can be right about the dangers of promoting gangster culture while being rich and successful. He can be right that parents need to actively steer their kids away from street life instead of glorifying it. He can be right that there's massive hypocrisy in the hip-hop industry when it comes to violence and street codes. All of that can be true, and it can still be wrong to repeatedly mock a grieving father and disrespect his dead son. 6ix9ine and Charleston White both thrive on controversy. They've built their entire brands on saying the most shocking things possible, and then defending those statements by pointing out uncomfortable truths that nobody else wants to talk about. It's an effective strategy for getting attention, for staying relevant, for keeping people talking about you. But there's a human cost to that strategy. And in this case, that cost is being paid by Gilly and his family, who have to keep hearing their son's death used as a punchline. The hip-hop community is deeply divided on this issue. Some people think Charleston White is absolutely right, in that Gilly needs to hear these harsh truths. They believe that sometimes you need someone to be brutally honest, even if it hurts, especially when lives are at stake. They point out that if more parents in the industry heard this message and actually changed their behavior, fewer young people would end up dead. They see Charleston as a necessary voice calling out the poison in hip-hop culture. Other people think 6ix9ine and Charleston White are just attention seekers, using tragedy for clicks and views. They believe that no valid cultural critique justifies repeatedly disrespecting someone's dead child. They argue that there are ways to have these conversations about culture and responsibility without being intentionally cruel to grieving families. They see this as exploitation of tragedy rather than genuine advocacy. What makes this even more complicated is the question of who gets to decide what's appropriate when discussing these issues. Charleston White presents himself as a youth advocate, trying to save lives by showing young people the consequences of street life, but is using someone's dead son as a cautionary tale actually helping anyone? Or is it just causing more pain? Is there a way to have honest conversations about the dangers of gangster culture without turning real tragedies into content? The broader question here is about hip-hop culture itself and where it's heading. For decades, authenticity in rap has been tied to street credibility, to having a criminal past, to proving you're really about that life. Artists who grew up in safe suburbs get clowned for being soft, while artists with violent pasts get celebrated for being real. This creates a perverse incentive structure where young people feel pressure to engage in dangerous behavior just to be taken seriously as artists. But then what happens when those artists make it big, when they have money, fame, and resources? Are they supposed to completely abandon that image? Can they authentically speak about their past without glorifying it? And most importantly, what message does it send to their kids and to young fans when successful rappers continue promoting street culture, long after they've escaped the streets themselves? These are the questions that make Charleston White's critique cut so deep, even if his delivery is intentionally offensive. He's not wrong that there's something deeply hypocritical about millionaire rappers promoting gang culture to teenagers. He's not wrong that parents bear some responsibility for the environments they create for their children. He's not wrong that hip-hop has a serious problem with glorifying violence and then acting shocked when that violence continues. But being right about the culture doesn't make him right about how he's chosen to express these views. There's a difference between harsh truth-telling and weaponizing someone's grief for content. There's a difference between cultural critique and personal cruelty. And there's a difference between holding people accountable and dancing on graves. So where does that leave us? Was Gilly wrong for threatening Charleston? Was Charleston wrong for the way he talks about Gilly's son? Was 6ix9ine wrong for piling on? The answer is probably that everyone involved has made mistakes here. But those mistakes aren't all equal. The hip-hop community needs to have serious conversations about the culture of violence and the responsibility that comes with platform and influence. But those conversations don't require disrespecting the dead to be effective.